A Karen employee treated me, as a customer, badly and didn't realize I was the owner of the business she worked in. She didn't believe me when I revealed myself to be the owner because, according to her, I was too young to run a business. So I fired her on the spot. Here's what happened. So some backstory. Recently, my HR team hired a new employee, who I'll call Karen. So I own a small chain of bakeries in Australia, and at the young age of 25, I've become a successful entrepreneur in the industry. Though I may appear young, looking like I'm 17, I put in the hard work and dedication to build my business from the ground up. I always like to do surprise visits to my cafes, to make sure everything is running smoothly and to ensure my customers are happy. On this particular day, I decided to visit one of my cafes, pretending to be a regular customer. As soon as I walked in, Karen greeted me with an attitude. Not sure why, she was rude and dismissive. I could tell she was in a bad mood and didn't want to be there. I was like, yo, what's good? You don't seem to be too happy here. And she's all like, customers are a pain in the ass. I don't know why I had to put up with this shit. I was like, damn, that's not cool. As I was ordering my pastry, I overheard Karen complaining to her coworker about the customers and how she didn't want to be there. I was honestly surprised. I mean, I know working retail can be tough sometimes, but you gotta keep that attitude in check, especially when you're working for me. I decided to sit down and observe her a bit, and noticed that she was not only rude to the customers, but also her coworkers. After I finished my order, I decided to have a little chat with Karen to get to know her. But after a short convo, I realized she was a new hire and I decided to reveal to her that I was the owner. At first, she didn't believe me, thought I was joking, and said that I was too young to run a business. She was like, haha, sure you're the owner. You're just some teenager pretending to be the boss. I was like, I'm serious. I am the owner. And she goes, prove it. I was like, fine, go ahead and Google my name. She pulls out her phone and Googles my name, and I see her face change as she realizes that I'm the real deal. She then starts to apologize, but I can tell that her apology is insincere. She was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't mean to be rude. I was like, it doesn't matter if you didn't know. Your attitude and behavior is unacceptable in my business. You were not only rude to the customers, but also to your coworkers. I won't tolerate that kind of behavior in my cafes. She starts to get defensive and says, I'm just having a bad day. It won't happen again. I was like, it doesn't matter if you're having a bad day. You're representing my business, and you need to be professional at all times. Your attitude and behavior is not something that can be fixed with a simple apology. I've made the decision to let you go. Karen was shocked and starts to argue with me. You can't fire me. I need this job. You have no right to treat me like this. I didn't know you were the owner. I would have never acted like this. I replied firmly, it doesn't matter if you didn't know. Your attitude and behavior is unacceptable in my business. You're not only rude to the customers, but also to your coworkers. I won't tolerate that kind of behavior in my cafes. She then starts to get more aggressive. You're just a kid. You can't tell me what to do. I've been working in this industry for years. I know what I'm doing. I retorted, age doesn't define my capabilities as a business owner. I worked hard to get where I am, and I won't let anyone disrespect me or my business. She then starts to plead, please, I need this job. I have bills to pay. I have a family to take care of. Can't you just give me another chance? I replied, I understand your situation, but your attitude and behavior is not something that can be fixed with a simple apology or chance. I've made the decision to let you go, and I will be giving you a week's notice, but I expect you to leave immediately and not return to the cafe. She continues to argue, but I won't back down. I can't have someone like that representing my business. She was so rude and dismissive, not only to the customers, but also to her coworkers. I couldn't believe that my HR team hired her in the first place. As she left the cafe, I could see the other employees and customers watching the exchange with shock. They knew that I don't tolerate that kind of behavior in my cafes. I want to make sure that my customers and employees feel respected and valued, and I won't let anyone come in and disrupt that. I have to say, the OP definitely handled the situation with Karen perfectly. As a business owner, it's important to ensure that all employees represent the business in a professional manner. Karen's attitude and behavior towards customers and coworkers was completely unacceptable, and I can understand why the OP made the decision to let her go. It's also impressive that at such a young age, the OP has built a successful business from the ground up and is taking charge to ensure it runs smoothly. The fact that Karen didn't even believe that the OP was the owner because of his age just shows that she has a lot to learn about respect and professionalism. Overall, the OP handled the situation with maturity and firmness. An entitled Karen dad thinks he can kick me and my kids out of a public playground just because he rented a nearby pavilion. So I decided to take matters into my own hands by calling the park ranger. Here's what happened. So I'm at a city park with my kids. We've been to this park a bunch. There's this one spot where there's a rocky hill, all tree covered, nice and shady on a hot day. There's a playground and pavilion at the top of the hill. We get up there and I immediately notice loud noises and I'm having to step over cables and extension cords. Someone rented the pavilion and set up not one but 3 bounce houses around it. Effing great. So I had to give the disappointing news to my kids that even though they are surrounded by bounce houses, they cannot play in them since this is a private party. But they are free to go hit the playground. Everyone is cool. I sit on bench as my kids go to town on the fake pirate ship when I hear a, "Hey." That's when entitled dad, doing his best to imitate the situation from Jersey Shore, walks up to me and informs me that the playground is closed for a private party. I look at him and inform him that the public park does not close for private parties, and it sounds like he rented the pavilion nearby, which is fine, but doesn't give him exclusive use of the neighboring playground. He storms off and returns with a rental agreement and shoves in my face, telling me to get my fucking kids and leave. Right, so rental agreement is very clearly for the pavilion. All for the grand sum of $35 for 4 hours. How could any sensible adult think that $35 grants you exclusive use of a public playground? Moreover, why is it so important for you to have exclusive use of the public playground? I again point out to him that he rented the pavilion, not the park, and my kids won't go on his bounce houses and we won't go into his pavilion. But the playground is fair game for everyone. He begins hurling threats and I'm weighing just taking my kids and leaving to avoid this asshole. Then I decide I need to take a stand on principle. So I tell him to fuck off and proceed to use my phone to find the phone number for the park officer. Our county staffs our parks. During the summer months, they employ park rangers who have peace officer authority. I call the park ranger and tell him that there is trouble at this shady playground and they need to come right away. Sure enough, as I'm getting off the phone, Dolph returns with 2 of his meathead friends to tell me that they are ejecting me from the park. No, you're not. And if you touch me, I'm calling the cops and pressing charges. No anger, no rage. With this promise of action, however, one of them kind of winds his eyes and sets back saying to his friend, "Just leave them alone, man." This guy, for some reason, does not want the police coming and it is very obvious. The ringleader won't back down, however, and tries his best to get in my face, scream and yell. He grabs my arm. I remove his hand. All of this just as I see the ranger pull up, yell for everyone to step back from one another and come over. This smug fucker shoves the rental contract into the chest of the ranger, telling him that I'm trespassing and he rented the space for the day for his kid's party. Now, normally, I don't like posturing by law enforcement, but here it was pretty amusing. Ranger, touch me again and I'm arresting you. Reads contract. This is for renting the pavilion. You have use of the pavilion, but the playground is open for public access. Hands it back. Also, your permit doesn't allow you to set up bounce houses. Where did you plug these in? Ranger follows the extension cords and sees that they ran them to the nearby public bathrooms. There was an outdoor outlet. It was locked. The dude cut the lock off so he could plug in his shit. Ranger comes back with the broken lock. Did you cut this lock? It was like that when I found it. Really? Because it was intact this morning. Some random person cut this lock and you just happened upon it within the last 2 hours. I guess. Long story short, he let them stay and let them keep the bounce house castles because he didn't want to ruin a kid's party. He wrote the guy a citation for the broken lock and the unauthorized power use and banned him from the park for the remainder of the season, after the party. Amazingly, the entire event was lost on my children who barely noticed anything was going on. Likely because of the compressor noise. I can't even imagine having to deal with a dad trying to kick you and your kids out of a public playground. The fact that he thought that his $35 rental fee gave him exclusive use of the playground is just ridiculous. I can't even believe he had the audacity to grab your arm and try to eject you from the park. But you stood your ground and called the park ranger, which was the perfect way to handle the situation. Good on you for standing up for your rights and not letting him bully you and your kid. My entitled mother-in-law threw my family heirloom engagement ring down a storm drain. I've seen a lot of crazy people in my life, but my potential future mother-in-law, who I'll refer to as FMIL, is the absolute worst person I've ever met. I, a 30-year-old female, have been with my boyfriend, 31 male, for 8 months now. For the first few months, everything was amazing. He's the sweetest and most caring man I've ever been with. He likes to surprise me with fun dates and flowers for no apparent reason. The biggest surprise of all, though, was when I met his mother. I met his parents for the first time a few months ago. The first thing FMIL said to me when I walked in the door was, "Are you Jewish?" I'm not, and I'm not particularly religious, but I was raised Catholic. Once I told her this, it was the beginning of the madness. She immediately stopped talking to me and acted as if I didn't exist. I was extremely nervous about meeting my boyfriend's parents, so this broke my heart. I was determined to make a good impression, so I kept trying to connect with her. This was a huge mistake and I should have just let it go. Once we were all seated for dinner, she finally decided to try and make conversation. I have naturally red hair and she asked me if my parents had the same color. I told her that I have the same hair as my mother. She then had the audacity to ask me, "Does the carpet match the drapes?" I had no idea how to respond and just sat there stunned. Seeing my reaction, she said, "Don't worry, I will just ask my son about it later." I looked over at my boyfriend who seemed equally as shocked, but he didn't say anything. She then started to go on about my hair being too curly. She told me that I really need to learn how to run a brush through my hair and think about my appearance more when I'm out with her son. Then when I didn't eat much at dinner, she gave me her version of a compliment. I was told it was good that I'm watching what I eat because it would be a shame if I got any bigger. This was just my first meeting with this woman. As soon as I got into my car, I burst into tears until I got home. My boyfriend was texting me and apologizing for his mother's behavior, but the damage was done and I had told him I needed time to think. He went into apology overload after this and started sending flowers to my office every day and leaving me messages begging me to talk to him. I finally agreed and we went out to dinner. He told me he spoke with his mother about her inappropriate comments and he swore it would never happen again. With this reassurance, I decided to give it another chance. Fast forward 2 weeks to when he invited me to come to a family birthday party. This time I would also be meeting his sisters and grandparents. His grandparents and sisters are awesome people. They asked me normal questions about my job, family, and friends. His mother seemed to be avoiding me throughout the evening and honestly, I was okay with that. I went to grab something from my purse and noticed that it was not where I left it. I looked everywhere but I could not find it. I went and asked my boyfriend and he began to help me look. He then got a strange look on his face and he quickly went upstairs. I could then hear a lot of yelling begin upstairs. He came back down holding my purse after a few minutes and told me that we were leaving. Once we got in the car, I asked him what was going on. His mother had taken my purse so that she could see my driver's license. She intended to try and run a background check on me. He told me she had told him this earlier, but honestly had thought she was joking. I thought that it was best if I avoided any of his family functions for the time being. This worked out great for a while and he went to any of his family parties alone. He would ask me each time before leaving if I was sure I didn't want to go, but I always declined. Last week, his family had their family reunion and he asked me to please come with him. I was very reluctant, but considering there would be so many people present, I didn't think she would pull anything. When we got there, everything was going great. I met his extended family and got to catch up with his sisters. His mother did seem to be shooting me death glares all night, but I brushed it off. Soon she came over and joined a table I was seated at with his sisters and some cousins. The conversation was pleasant as we were talking about his sister's children. His sister has a daughter who is 12 and is the same age as my niece. I then showed his sister a picture of my niece on my phone. His mother took a look at the screen and began to laugh. She told me that she hopes me and her son ever have children that they don't look like my niece. My niece is beautiful, by the way, and she's only 12 years old. What kind of monster attacks a 12-year-old child's appearance? This was my breaking point and I went off like a volcano. I started to scream at her and told her that she's the most evil person I've ever had the disadvantage to meet. I told her if I ever have children with her son, she can be certain she will never meet them because hell is too far to travel. I'm not 100% certain exactly everything that I said, but from what his younger sister later said, it was epic. She began to play the victim and wailed that I just misunderstood her joke. My boyfriend came rushing over at this point and she threw herself into his arms, telling him I'm a horrible woman and he needed to throw me out right now. He told her that wasn't going to happen and to stop making a fool of herself. She seemed to accept this for a moment and sat back down. She just kept sobbing that I didn't understand how to take a joke. Then something in her snapped as she noticed something that my boyfriend was holding in his hand and began to have another meltdown. I didn't understand what was happening at this point and just stood there watching a grown woman pitch a fit like a toddler. None of what she was saying made any sense to me as it was mostly just incoherent screaming, but I did pick up on many derogatory comments directed my way. My boyfriend then told me we were leaving and told me to grab my things. As I started to get ready, FMIL made a lunge from my boyfriend's hand and grabbed the small box he was holding. She then looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You will never have this ring, you little bitch." She ran outside and threw the box down the storm drain. Turns out that my boyfriend was intending on proposing to me. He had just obtained his grandmother's ring while we were at the reunion. His grandmother is completely heartbroken because now her ring is down a storm drain instead of continuing on in the family as she had always wanted. I don't know where to go from here. I'm devastated, confused, and exhausted. Can I ask him to never see his mother again? Is that my place to say something like that? I'm sorry that my story is so long, but I really need to get this rant off my chest. Wow. You need to sit down with your boyfriend and explain that you're not going to tolerate that kind of nonsense. You all need to decide together how to handle her, starting with you having no contact with her and him not sharing an ounce of information about you with her. Then you need to figure out how to survive the wedding, children, etc. Anyways, if you enjoyed these stories, feel free to click on one of the videos on screen, or you're definitely the jerk.